Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tracy Dolan. I'm the Deputy Commissioner here at the Department of Health in Vermont, and I'm also a board member of the Vermont Public Health Association. I have some colleagues with me today, both members of the Public Health Association and members of the Department of Health. So the title of today's presentation is It Starts with Community, Vermont Perspectives on Healthy Community Design. We're going to talk about some Vermont success stories, and I bet you're going to be surprised by some of what you hear. The healthy community design concept is ingenious because it's endlessly flexible. It's widely used by health professionals and planners in a variety of contexts. According to the Centers for Disease Control, your address can play an important role in how long you live and how healthy you are. The physical design of your community affects your health every time you step out your front door. Sometimes making healthy choices is not easy. Being physically active is hard if you do not have access to sidewalks at parks, and eating right is hard if healthy foods are not available. Therefore, healthy community design can be very effective in addressing the following issues: adult and childhood obesity, risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, and diabetes, air pollution, tobacco use, traffic injuries, community cohesion, crime, and safety. Here are three main themes of today's webinar that you'll want to keep in mind: community, sustainability, and affordability. The second two themes depend entirely on the first one, community. When communities come together and harness their energies, great things happen. Healthy community design isn't about major infrastructure projects. Small, inexpensive changes can have significant positive impacts too. Each community decides what its goals are. When decisions are jointly made, responsibility is jointly felt and shared. This makes projects not only affordable, but more importantly, it makes them sustainable. We'd like to pause to acknowledge our sponsors. This webinar is a production of the Vermont Public Health Association in partnership with the Vermont Department of Health, and it was funded through the American Public Health Association and the Centers for Disease Control. Here's how today's webinar will run. First, because we're conscious of your time and because we have a collection of really great community stories, we've created the bulk of our presentation in movie form. So we'll begin with our first presentation in just a minute or so, and this will be some thoughts about healthy community design from Heidi Klein and Suzanne Kelly from the Vermont Department of Health and from the Public Health Association, as well as some community health promotion folks around the state. Next, we'll pause for questions and discussion, and then we'll highlight 4 of the many exciting stories here in Vermont. So this will be a 15-minute presentation, the second presentation. And at the conclusion of the second presentation, which will be in the form of a small movie, we'll have additional time for questions and answers with myself, Suzanne, and Heidi. So please join us for that. In the meantime, if you have questions as we go through and you'd like to submit your questions, please do it via the WebEx text function on the right-hand side of your screen.
I am Suzanne Kelly, and I am the Healthy Communities Coordinator at the Vermont Department of Health. We are working to help create communities where people have access to be physically active and to eat healthy foods. There's a range of ways that we do that, from grants to communities to collaborating with regional planning commissions and the Department of Transportation. So there's bottom-up and there's top-down initiatives going on. It's definitely about starting to build capacity within communities so they can really do this work. There's 4 areas that we're funding communities to be mobilizing around: increasing bicycle and pedestrian access, increased mixed-use development, improving parks, recreation, and open space, and increasing access to healthy food.
What the Healthy Community Design movement is about is recognizing that we made very purposeful choices about how we grew our communities, mainly, through the 60s, 70s, 80s, where we were focused on accommodating cars and commerce instead of people. And so it's saying, well, let's look at what we knew in the past worked. What about our vibrant town centers, and how do we think about that as we continue to change and grow over time? Because so much of what the healthy community design concept is about is how do you look at your infrastructure and your policies. So if you have your policies in place when we are doing new construction, when we are having new development, when we're setting up our schools or our communities, we're going to say that one of their values or goals is that this be a walkable community, that this be a bikeable community.
Our goal is to see these sustainable changes. Some of it is boring stuff for sure. I mean, it's things like a town plan now has language to support health and wellness. But the effect of that is that with all new development, they have to consider the impact of health in anything they do. So it sounds kind of boring, like, oh, a town just changed their town plan, but the result of that is really important. There are a lot of communities that are getting that health language into their town plans now, which I think is really a starting point. The next piece is for coalitions and community members to know that language is there and to make sure the town follows through.
Our towns actually, in large part, have fabulous planning and policy tools available to them because of our local land use and state land use policies. When we're passing our road and bridges and state transportation or our local transportation budgets, which they have to do yearly, is someone saying, so what percent of that is going to go into bicycle paths? What percent of that is going to go into sidewalks? Where's that long-range plan for our pedestrian infrastructure? We make decisions every year about where we're going to put our money. I think that we have the tools, it's just using them. It's part of our roads funds. It's part of our community taxes. It's part of our school funding. It's already embedded there. It's just making it a priority and a way of thinking.
It's really about what do we want our community to look like? What's important? There's a lot of advocates for this kind of work who talk about physical activity and healthy eating being engineered out of our lives. And so now we're working toward re-engineering it back into our lives.
One of the keys to building a better community is putting people first. In any community, cars and other forms of transportation are always going to play a role, but if you want a community to come alive, you have to make cars secondary and put people first.
The key thing is, I think you can have healthy community design without saying you can't develop. So I don't think the question is should we or shouldn't we develop, because the reality is we probably will. What I hope people will do is say, if we are going to develop, how are we going to do it in a way that promotes our community values? So it's not should you, it's how should you, or how can you.
Active transportation needs to become kind of the way of doing things. Baby steps. So, you kind of have to create that shift in incremental ways. But yeah, I think you get a lot of excitement when you get people out on that trail and everyone walking to school, and it really energizes people. And then, you create your school travel plan and you make it the easier choice.
At the end of the day, if you can bring it back to something as simple as we want our community to be a healthy place to raise kids, you're going to find that no one disagrees with that.
Hi, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed that movie. We're coming back in now to our webinar. If you're trying to find your way back in, just go down to the bottom of your screen and click on your WebEx tab. So once again, this is Tracy Dolan from the Vermont Department of Health. And we wanted to pause for a few minutes here and give anyone who's joining us late a chance to catch up, and second, to answer any questions you have so far. I don't know if any questions have come in. We'll check as I continue to discuss. So let's recap some of the ideas we've just heard. Healthy community design is about access to healthy foods and healthy activities, collaboration with a variety of parties. If you're not sure where to start, try one of these: local state health office, regional or local planning commissions, local Department of Transportation, local recreation department, or town officials. Or contact Suzanne Kelly here at the Health Department. And you've got her email there, suzanne.kelly@state.bc.us. She's our in-house expert on healthy community design. Choices. We make choices all the time about our communities. This is about being an active part of that process. So process. This is a process of looking at local policies to see what works now, what worked in the past, what we like, and what we'd like to change. And it's about putting language into your town's plan or making sure that the town follows through on the language that's there. Tools. We have them already. In many cases, they're just waiting to be used. Adding, not subtracting. It's about improvements, not contention. It's about adding value and enjoyment to community life. This is actually something I've learned a lot about from my colleague Heidi Klein. Heidi, did you want to talk a little bit about what it means to add and not subtract when we talk about healthy community design?
Sure. In Vermont, we're blessed with a really wonderful policy framework for local land use development, and I think we have a lot of people who put a lot of energy into creating the infrastructure based on a commitment to our downtowns and our vibrant lives. Vermonters share a passion for healthy living and for vibrant downtown communities. And so while the policy infrastructure is in place, we as public health advocates don't necessarily participate always in our local land use planning. And so we have embarked upon a plan for the last 5 years to really invest in making sure that the public health community and others see the intersection between our vibrant local food economy, our downtown communities, and public health outcomes. And so we are joining as partners in some of the work that's already been done around smart growth and vibrant communities. And we are trying to say, look, what we do for economic development is also good for health. What is good for health is good for our children. It's good for our long-term sustainability. So we see it as a way of converging on our common goals here in Vermont.
Thank you very much, Heidi. It's also about setting priorities. Setting priorities. Healthy community design means looking at each local community through the lens of health. And it can be difficult because there can often be a lot of things you want to do, and sometimes it's really about starting small. Finally, it's about consensus. Consensus is about making decisions as a community as to what's best for each individual community's health. And this can be an interesting process because sometimes it's difficult to get consensus. And so that's where really the community work comes in, and that's where sometimes it takes a little more time to build that glue. If there are no questions, we're going to move on into our next section. So let's hear about healthy community design in action. The following are 4 case studies